guys, this is Calvin here from RC Bashers UK, and today we're going to be doing a full review on the Hubsan 107D Plus. We've had it for a couple of months now, and it's about time we did a full review. A lot of the stuff you might hear will be also on my first look video. First impressions, battery, charging, USB socket, etc, etc. But we've also got some footage now that we can show to explain things a bit better, and we've spent a couple of months with it, and we feel like it's time to do a full review. So the first thing I want to talk about, there's pros and cons obviously to this quadcopter, and we're going to talk about the pros first. So firstly, the one thing that's noticeable about this quadcopter over the other Hubsans is it's got this nice big camera here. I don't know if you can see that well on the camera there. So you've got a nice big lens. It's got a slightly bigger field of view over the other ones, but it's nothing major, nothing to write home about. But it is nice. You do have to clean the screen a little bit. If you put your finger on there, it does affect the video quality. So I like to keep mine nice and clean with this little cloth I've got over here. Give it a little wipe just before you go out. So yeah, the quality of the picture it's pretty good. It's a little bit, I don't know how to quite explain it, but it seems to change the shutter speed is the best way I would explain it. When you go up into the sky, it goes quite dark to sort of counteract the light, and then when you point it down sort of near the floor again, it brightens back up. It can be quite annoying because it does do that quite often in a video. As soon as you push forward and start to fly around, it brightens up because it's facing near the floor, and then when you try and hover or counteract the wind and you have to pull backwards and it faces upwards, it will darken off a little bit, so you can't see basically what's on the floor below you or around you. But you could see something that's in the sky, I suppose, but most of the time I'm filming to see what's on the ground below me, so that can be slightly irritating. But let's start with the pros first of all. There is a lot of pros, and there are a few cons as well. So the first thing I'd like to say is that this thing is very smooth when you fly. It doesn't suffer from a lot of jerkiness like I find the other Hubsans do. If you fly them in sort of basic beginner mode, they're quite stable, but then when you're putting in the controls, it does tend to sort of jerk around a bit. This one is completely different. It's very smooth, very forgiving on the controls, and unless it's really fighting against the wind, you can get some really nice still video, which looks great. That's personally the reason I bought the quad, because I'm practicing for bigger quads such as the Inspire or the DJI Phantom Pro or something along those lines. Being a photographer, I want to get into that sort of industry, and this was something I thought might help me to practice and fine-tune my skills. I've been a helicopter pilot for about, I'd say, a good few years. I've had a few remote control helicopters, and that's put me in good stead for flying this little thing. But it really doesn't make any difference. It's so smooth and stable. I think even a beginner could just pick this up and start filming with it, no problem. Once you get your orientation and your controls facing forward and away, you're pretty much good to go with this thing. So because of this smoothness and stableness, I think the videos are much better quality than the other Hubsans. The light sort of changing does slightly irritate, but if you're in a situation where you're filming near the ground, you're not high up in the sky, or you're at an event, or you're, for example, for me in the forest, you can get some really nice shots, and it won't change the exposure too much while you're flying around, and it'll be pretty consistent. So because of that, you can also use the FPS mode, which is another great feature, and due to it being so stable, it's quite easy to fly with the FPS mode. Once you get used to the sort of screen telling you, oh, I'm moving backwards, I'm moving to the right, or things like that, you can counteract quite easily, and if you want to, you can hold it very steady using the screen. Here's the remote here. There's your little screen. I'll also put some video on that showing off the screen and how it works. It's not perfect, it has cut off a few times on me, just for a couple of seconds or two, nothing major. But when it's quite far away from you, that does send you into a slight panic, just because you don't know where it is, and you sort of try and think, "Oh, I'll look up in the sky, and where is it?" And it's not there. It's almost invisible, with it being white as well. If there are clouds above you and you're flying on a cloudy day, it pretty much vanishes into nothing, in which case you have to quickly flick back to your screen, hope that it's come back on, and you know, direct yourself using your landmarks back to where you are. So that can be slightly frustrating. Anyway, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is the altitude hold, which is something that a lot of people have been talking about. Altitude hold, to put it bluntly, the stick will stay in the middle. You press up to go up and down to go down. If you leave it in the middle, can you see that? Yeah. If you leave it in the middle, it will just stay where you've left it. So if you take off and have it hovering about here, it should stay around here. Now there is 1 or 2 feet buffer, should we say, where if the helicopter feels it needs, or not needs to, but I think it works off sensing the air pressure through these holes. So if it senses a difference in pressure, it may slightly go up or it may slightly go down. It's great when you're outdoors, in a field or in the forest or anywhere outdoors really, as long as it's not too windy. The wind seems to play around with the altitude hold a little bit, because obviously the pressure may be changing every time there's a different kind of gust. But you know, in a stable environment like in the woods or on a clear day, it will pretty much hold within 1 or 2 feet of where you've set it, which I think is a great feature. It's not as fun as a normal 107C, for example, or you know, even a helicopter, or just the general style that most people are used to, which is where the stick is down here, and to accelerate or to lift, you push up, and then when you get to about here, it starts flying around, and you can play with all this bit to go shooting up, down, shooting up. So it's not as fun as that, and therefore it loses a bit of maneuverability, or a bit of control from your inputs. So you have to sort of trust the altitude mode, and not rely on your fingers so much, pushing up and lowering and vice versa. So you do have to trust it while it's there. If it does move up and down, I mean, you can just accept that in your video slightly, or you can try and adjust to sort of keep it at the same level. That does tend to lead to it doing a bit of bouncing. You'll see that in some of the videos, and that can be very irritating. It did happen a lot to me at the start, but I've sort of got used to it now, and I've learned to sort of trust the altitude mode, and if it lowers slightly when I'm videoing, I'm not too bothered. But yeah, if it was for work or any professional sort of shooting, obviously that wouldn't be good enough. And as you may or may not know, the bigger drones such as the Inspire and the DJI 3 Phantom and stuff like that, I think they have GPS hold for a start to stop it moving around, and I think they have some sort of sensors on the bottom to say, right, you're 10 feet up in the air, stay 10 feet up in the air. And obviously when you move right, it will stay 10 feet, and when you move left, forward, back, vice versa. They do have the exact same control style as this. It will stay in the middle wherever you leave it, push up and it will go up, down and it will go down. So that's the altitude hold. Some people, you know, don't like this at all, and they say it's not fun, and you know, it's not their kind of control style that they like to use. But for me personally, and for anyone else out there who wants to just do video, I mean, this is what I bought the thing for. It's a video player up in the sky. I'm personally not too fussed about that. I've got many other things: Husband's 107Cs, helicopters, anything else that I use where I can have fun, acrobatics, all that sort of stuff. So this really isn't suited for anyone who wants to, you know, do tricks or crazy flying, or drop it out the sky, shut the motors off and then restart them before you hit the floor, or any kind of stuff like that. It can do that, apparently. It does say in the manual. Something I've not really tested, just because it's very different to the other Hubsons. With those, if you wanted to do a forward roll, you press back and then forwards, and if you wanted to do a right roll, you press left and then right quickly, and it will flip over. With this one, apparently, I think you just hold it and it will go all the way around. But that's not really something I want to test. In beginner mode, it's very, very stable and has hardly any controls, or any tilt, should I say. You'll have to excuse me, I'm not very good with the technical terms. Aileron or this or that, I'm not really very technical like that. But it won't tilt very much, so if there is any wind, in beginner mode, I would almost say it's pretty useless. It will handle a very mild wind, and it will go forward, obviously, and backwards and sideways, and anywhere else you want to go, but at a slower speed. Maybe good for beginners, or again, if you're filming and you really want to sort of get a good still capture or a nice panning movement or anything like that, then it is very good for that. Again though, in expert mode, once you click the right hand stick down here, that will put it in expert mode, and it's very similar. It's very stable, it leans more, and it will go faster, quite a bit faster, but not massively. Again, not like the Hubsan 107C or any of the other Hubsans that can really, aggressively angle and fly forwards pretty fast. I mean, I've put some videos there on the channel, you can see how fast the other ones go. But this one's just a nice smooth flyer. It will move when it needs to, and it will hold sturdy and steady when you want it to as well, which is my favourite feature. So yeah, so that's the altitude hold and the flight style. Again, altitude hold is not for everyone, and I've had quite a few comments of people who don't like it, and quite a few comments of people who do like it, and that's what they're looking forward to. So for all of you out there, I hope if you have bought it, you're enjoying the altitude mode, and if you've tried it and you don't like it, then it's something to get used to, but if it's not quite for you, then that's fair enough. The FPV now, let's just move on to that for a second. The FPV is great. This screen here is great, and you can see everything that's coming from the camera here. It's pretty fast, the refresh rate, and it's pretty good. Apart from the odd cutoff for a second or two, which I mentioned before, where you can be a bit left of like, ooh, left feeling like, where is my drone? Where's it looking? And generally, when that happens, this will cut off to go black, just for a second or two, and your automatic reaction is to look up in the air and go, where's my drone? But to be honest, that doesn't help you. Like I say, because it's white, if there's any clouds or anything like that, you pretty much don't see it. If it's over 50 meters away and you've not been watching it constantly, you'll pretty much have no idea where it is. And the only resort is to look back at this and to hope that the video has come back on, and then see your landmarks, turn it around, see yourself, and start flying back. Which I wish it didn't have the cut-offs, I'll be honest, and I don't know if it's something to do. I've tried it with my phone off in my pocket, I've had it with my phone on in my pocket. It doesn't seem to make much difference. When my phone's on, obviously I've got Bluetooth on and wireless on, every other sort of waves, radio waves or whatever, wireless waves, Bluetooth waves coming out of it, and they could interfere with it. But again, I've tried it with the phone left in my car, and I've still noticed that it does cut out for a second or two. It's not very often. In a 6-minute battery, it'll probably happen maybe 5 times or something like that. But again, if it's at a moment where the helicopter or the quad, sorry, is far away, or you're close to a building or any kind of obstacle, it could lead to a crash, or it could be quite irritating. It could just fly away, and you don't quite get it back, and it lands somewhere, or you press down on the stick for any reason, and suddenly, or it hits a tree, and suddenly it's stuck there, and you've probably not got much idea. If it does crash, it does turn itself off. If you have a light crash, it won't. So the best thing to do really would be maybe to try and lower it down slowly, and keep the quad on. Not that that's possible, of course, when you don't know where it is, because if it does crash, it turns off, which is kind of a nightmare, because it would be great if it just kept on, and then you could maybe put some inputs in to listen out for it, or you could look through the screen and think, oh, I'm near there, or even if it's only got 3 rotors, try and lift it and turn it a bit just to see what's around you, or any kind of recovery system would be great. So having that auto shut off isn't my favourite thing, to be honest. I don't really know what it's good for. I mean, obviously, if you're going to hit a blade against a wall, it can knock the blade off, it could burn out a motor. But for the sake of however much these motors are, 5, 10, 15 pounds, I'd rather have my drone back than be bothered too much about losing a motor or a prop or something like that. So that's one downside, which does occur because of the FPV. But on the whole, as I'm discussing pros, the FPV is a positive. Obviously, it's reflected in the price of this quadcopter. I think this one is about £200 sterling, whereas the 107C and other Hubsans are 40 to £50 sterling. So it is quite an expensive quad, and obviously you don't want to lose it. So there should be some way, I think, of being able to tell whereabouts it is, maybe off the device or off the control pad or something. The other thing is as well, if you crash and it turns off and you never know where it is, you've also got quite an expensive memory card in there, with it being 720p. I think I've got a 32 gig in there. Alright, it's not that expensive, but I think it was about £30 sterling. So that's not nice to lose either. Anyway, but yeah, on the whole, FPV is a great feature. It's fun to fly, and if you get used to the screen and what it's saying to you, which way it's tilting, and how the ground is moving when you look through the screen, you can gradually learn to sort of keep it steady or fly exactly where you want to fly it or counteract for the wind. You can do all that through this. The screen rate is fast enough, refresh rate, to be able to know what's going on as it's going on, should we say. So that's that basically. Smooth, stable, good quality video, altitude hold. It takes away one aspect of you having to know where your finger is, what altitude you're at, and things like that. You just have to learn to trust it, leave it up in the sky and let it do its thing, and obviously bring it down or take it higher. So that's that. The last thing I wanted to talk about, which I think is a positive, is called auto lowering. Now, I've called it auto landing, I think, in a couple of videos, but I've changed them now to auto lowering, because apparently no devices auto land, even though I'm sure the Inspire maybe does and a few others. But a few of my comments have been like, auto landing, nothing auto lands, but I'm sure some of them do. Anyway, this one, it doesn't auto land from anywhere. It auto lowers. So once your battery's getting flat, it will start flashing at you from these lights on the front and back, and at a certain stage it will just start to lower, and there's not a lot you can do about it. Well, mine will anyway. I've heard reports that other people's actually goes up and they can't lower it, so that could be seen as a big negative, but mine seems to be working correctly as it states in the manual, and it will flash away like a lunatic, and then it will just suddenly start to come down, and if I push up on the stick, it will not go up at all. And what I think it does, it sort of brings it down near the floor, but it won't actually land it. Maybe because there's, maybe it's a safety feature. Maybe you're around long grass or something, or water or anything. So what it will do is it will go down to about here, very close to the floor, but then it will actually go back up. And what I think it wants you to do when you get down here is to shut the motors off, so it just lands, and it obviously these stop spinning, the props, shall we say. But what it does do is it comes down and then it shoots back up a bit, and it'll stay there for a couple of seconds, then it goes back down and then it comes back up. I'll put some video of showing you that. But again, I think once it gets down there, it's sort of saying to you, hey, shut your motors off, you're done. Which I think is a great feature. It's really good, especially compared to some of my other drones. When I'm flying around high up in the sky, I can't see this flashing. I also get no warning from my handset or anything like that. This one doesn't actually give you a warning from the handset. It's literally done all from the drone. It might do it on the screen, but when I'm focusing on the screen, the last thing I'm looking at is little bars here telling me how much battery life is left. Maybe that's something I need to get used to. But I've never had a problem with it. You can tell as soon as it starts to lower and you push up and it's not going up that you're like, right, get it back to me quickly. I don't want to lose my drone, and I want to have a nice landing where I've planned to land it, rather than on a barge in the middle of a canal or wherever. So that's auto lowering. Again, I think it's a great feature. It'd be great if there was a little beep or two from the handset, just to say, look, maybe just before it starts to auto lower, maybe just to say you've got 30 seconds of full flight left, and then when it starts to auto lower, maybe it could just go beep, 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 or something like that, just to let you know that it's coming down. So they're the main positives: smooth, good video quality, altitude hold, allows you to concentrate on filming and getting the shots right rather than having to actually fully control the quad. And the FPS, so you can go up to where you need to be and see what you're actually getting as you're getting it, rather than just pointing it at something and hoping when you get back that you've captured what you want to see. So yeah, that is basically the positives of this great little quadcopter. But unfortunately, there are a few negatives. And the first one, which I will discuss, is probably something you've been looking at thinking, something doesn't look right there, why is it like that? Which is that I have the battery hanging out here at the back. And that is because of these little connectors. Once I push that in fully, it's basically connected your battery. And from what I've learned over the years, keeping a battery connected is probably the worst thing you can do. It drains it very slowly, I believe. Um, and yeah, if you've ever had a helicopter or any other car or anything like that, and you've left a battery in it, come back to it a few months later or whatever, you can find it blown up, and that's because it's getting some sort of drain from the connection. So I basically leave mine like that at all times until I'm ready to fly, pop it in, and then away we go. Um, but not only that, the other thing is this battery I find is a down point. It's great that it plugs in and it's all neat and it's not going to fall out or anything like that, which is cool. But with this sort of charging connection, or this connection, so should I say, it makes charging irritating to say the least, because you have to have the battery in there and it has to be connected to the USB to charge. Now, whether when these things come out and there's a lot more stuff available for them, there'll be some sort of docking station that you can just pop these into and charge, that would be great. Otherwise, if you get 3 or 4, you can charge them up at night one by one and just leave them sat there ready for the next day. And if you've got 3 or 4, that would be great. It's also quite cool if you can see in there. Yeah, can you see in there? It's quite smooth in there and nice, and because this is in its little plastic casing, it does mean it fits in very nicely. Some of the old Hubsans with the battery with the cable sort of hanging out, they're all a bit of a different shape, and sometimes when you're trying to put them in, you feel like it's connecting or hitting stuff, and if you push really hard, you feel like it could actually break your quad. Now in this one, it's got a very smooth plate on the underneath of the circuit board is very smooth, and so is the base just above another circuit board. I don't know if you can see in there, but there's a circuit board at the bottom and a circuit board at the top, and this just quite happily slides in right in between them, and right at the back there's some connectors for this, which fits it all together and gives power to the drone. So yeah, that battery is a slight downside. I do prefer, even though they're all a different shape and they're annoying, the ones with the cable, I think I have about 10 for my 107C, and I can just fly, charge a couple, keep flying, charge a few more, keep flying, and never stop flying basically all day long, every day, if I really wanted to. Which unfortunately I don't with those little things. They are fun for a little bit, but after a while there's only so much you can do. If you want to get great videos, you need something a bit more stable like this. And if you just want to have fun, there are obviously bigger and better things out there, more powerful, more manoeuvrable. But they are good for flying around the house and stuff like that. Anyway, back to this one. So the battery, a slight downside. The second thing that I find is a slight downside is it doesn't have any guards that come with this helicopter at all. I mean, it basically, or this quadcopter, should I say? Sorry, it basically just comes like that in the box. There are no guards, nothing. And if you look at it closely, there isn't much room to fit a guard on there unless it can somehow fit. These are sort of like little clips that must pop off, but it all looks a bit complicated. And I really don't think you're going to be able to get guards for this helicopter. If they had to sit on this bit here, it's all very rounded, and then you can see here where it comes into this light, there's a real sort of, not a complicated shape, but I can imagine for a guard trying to sit on top of that, it could be a little bit of a complicated shape. It's not like the old ones where it's just a motor and you can just click it on the top. So that is a bit of a downside. The other thing is, well, whether this is a downside or not, I don't know. It doesn't have rubber feet, which a lot of the Hubsans do now, so if you bang it into the floor or anything like that. But in saying that, it never really bangs into the floor. Again, with the auto lowering, it sort of does its own thing. And if you do want to land it yourself, it comes down very smooth. It's not like you can put in a massive input and it will just plummet to the floor or completely turn the motors off, which would happen on the old ones. Um, but yeah, it does have like a little indent, and I'm guessing that if there was a shock, it would be taken by this. One thing I have thought to myself is if they did put rubber on it, as you have to start and shut off the engines yourself, if it's hovering around here and the motors are still on and the rotors are still spinning, if there was rubber on the floor, at the moment it sort of slides nicely like this, and it can, and then you can shut it down and it will stop. But if there was rubber, I can imagine it maybe, trying to tip itself, getting a bit stuck on the rubber and, maybe causing damage. So maybe that's a good thing and not a bad thing. But the next downside that I have is, these I've mentioned them a little bit before in the positives. It's not great against the wind. It could be a bit more agile. It seems to have a lot of power in these motors, but just not a lot of control, or you can't push it really as far as you want to, only as far as it allows. I did mention that apparently you can flick it right over. Again, I've never tried that, and when I've pressed right and forward on my stick, it only ever seems to really do what it can do, and then it will sort of stop. So that will be something I'll do in my other videos, or maybe I'll explain that, and figure out how to do the tricks, or maybe it is just the same as the old ones where you press left and right. I don't know. It's not. Again, it's a £200 quad. It's not something I want to be flipping over and flipping around and stuff like that. It's mainly for video, and that's it. So yeah, so not great against the wind. It could have a bit more sort of angle to fight against the wind. When it's a real strong wind, it holds itself nicely in the wind, and it can stay nice and still in the wind. I don't know if you've seen some of my windy, high altitude wind video, but it holds itself fine and everything. But if you wanted to do a nice sort of fly round in a strong wind, it's going to noticeably go slower into the wind, and you can't then power into that without changing your altitude, unless you're very good with the altitude mode. I mean, you can just lift it slightly and it will put a bit of power in, but again, it's not the strongest against the wind. The next thing is the video cuts, as I mentioned before. They're slightly irritating, and if there was a product out there that's very similar that doesn't cut out at all, maybe that would be better, especially if you're learning FPV. It does only cut out maybe 3, 4, 5 times in a 6-minute flight, but again, that can be enough for a crash or hitting a wall or a bush or anything. So even one cut out for me is a bit too much, especially when you're paying £200. I don't know. I don't think it's to do with range and stuff, because I've never really gone too far. I don't think. Always within 150 meters, which it states in the book, 100 to 150 meters. And I don't think I've really even gone 100 meters, to be fair. So I shouldn't or wouldn't expect any cutouts, and the fact that it does is a little bit irritating, especially for the money. So yeah, so that's annoying. Now the next thing is, the next thing, again, I've mentioned it as a positive, but it is also a downside, is the altitude hold. It's not for everyone. It does move up and down. It doesn't stay perfectly still at the altitude you select, which again is a downside. So as well as the altitude mode being a positive thing, and it will hold it roughly in the same area, that constant changing of height with the wind or the pressure or however it senses what's going on in the air, it could be fine-tuned, I think. Whether it's something to do with the reaction time of the motors once it senses that it's going to go down or anything like that, I don't know. You'd have to see with the brushless ones that are coming out in the next few months. Maybe they'll be a bit more responsive and they'll just instantly adjust and correct. But this one doesn't. It can go down and it can go up. And as the battery starts to go, after about 4 minutes, you do sort of have to hold it yourself at the altitude you want. It sort of starts to stop working the altitude mode, especially if you're near the floor. And when you're indoors, it's really not great at all. If you fly over a bin or anything like that, not that it can see the bin, but it must change the pressure because the thing likes to go up, and obviously there's ceilings indoors, and it can go up. A lot of people I've heard from don't like flying it indoors at all, and I would have to agree, really. It tends to be a bit erratic indoors if you're flying over obstacles, or if there's change, if there's a draft coming from somewhere, something sends it into a bit of a confused state. It will do the altitude hold, and I've done a couple of videos where we were racing with the Charismas, the little cars, and I did use it in the middle of the room, and I was just spinning it around, and it held it really great until about 3 to 4 minutes, where it started to just basically come down slightly on its own, and I would have to put it back up, and then it would come down again, put it back up. So that really did irritate me. It should just be able to sort of hold, especially indoors. I mean, the rooms I've tested it in, there's not that much of a draft or anything like that, and it should really be able to hold perfectly still in there. So slightly annoyed about that. Not the best. I've not really tried it against anything else that has altitude hold. I've seen the big ones, and with their sensors, they just hold exactly where you've put them. But I've not seen any other miniature stuff on the cheaper scale that has altitude hold, and I've not witnessed any of them, unfortunately. So I've got nothing to compare that to. Maybe you guys can let me know of any other drones that are like that, and if any of them work perfectly and have a great camera, because that could be a great mix. And the last thing, which I've already mentioned before, is the video sort of brightness refresh rate, or brightness refresh, should we say. Again, if you point towards anything with a constant sort of brightness, i.e. the ground, then it's fine. But the minute you come up into the sky and you've got the ground and the sky, unless you're pointing it just down, in which case everything will be great, it does, as soon as you come up to sort of level it, at level it will just about hold, but the second you come back a bit to point up into the air, it will darken down, and quite quickly as well. And for the second or two in your video that you might have to just pull back a bit just to realign yourself, or get into the perfect position, it does require some editing to brighten that up again, and when you do, it's not quite the same as what it's been filming before, so it's noticeable. And in the middle of your video to have to do that, it's quite irritating. For me personally, I haven't cut it out of my YouTube videos, but if I was going to use it to film anything, I would have to just cut that bit out. So that can be slightly irritating. It doesn't really happen. It happens on the 107C and the other drones that I've got, but it's much more forgiving. I don't know why or how, but it tends to go slower for a start. It'll phase itself into darker, which makes it slightly easy for editing, and it will stay brighter on the ground. It won't black out the ground completely. This one has a real sort of scale to it, where it can be perfect or very dark, whereas the other ones will never really go super dark. They'll just go a bit darker, which you can sort of handle, whereas this one, it really does darken off quite a bit to unusable video brightness. So yeah, so that's about it, guys. That is pretty much all my thoughts on the Hubsan 107D Plus. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you like the videos. We're always looking for more subscribers and to grow the channel. And we're always looking to buy the latest new RC gadgets.